about the stories and lives of the four evangelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Saint Matthew. Once hated as a tax collector, Matthew became one of Jesus' followers. He is best known as the writer of the first book of the New Testament, the Gospel according to Saint Matthew. Matthew, who lived in Galilee, was a tax collector. Tax collectors were hated and shunned by people and were banned from some temple services. The fact that the taxes went to the Romans made matters even worse. In spite of this, Jesus called on Matthew to become one of his most trusted friends. Matthew gave up a well-paid job to spend all of his time with Jesus. Years later, long after Jesus had died, Matthew wrote down everything he could remember about Jesus' life. His writings became the first of the four Gospels. No one knows exactly how Matthew's life ended. Legend tells us he preached in Ethiopia, Africa, where he died for his faith. Saint Matthew's feast is on September 21, and he is the patron saint of accountants, bookkeepers, and tax collectors. Saint Mark the Evangelist. Mark was a companion of the disciple Peter and Paul, and he worked alongside the early missionaries. He was a fascinating man and the author of the second Gospel. Mark lived in the city of Jerusalem. He was the son of a wealthy and important woman who was one of the first Christians. Her house was a meeting place for the disciples, and Mark often met them. He soon became interested in what they had to say and was baptized as a Christian. Mark decided to become a missionary, traveling first with the disciple Paul and later with his cousin Barnabas. When Mark eventually arrived in Rome, Italy, he became a close companion of Peter. Years later, when Mark wrote his gospel, he put in the stories that Peter had told him about the life and teachings of Jesus. Mark's later life is shrouded in the legend. It is said that he sailed to Egypt but was captured and killed. Around 700 years later, in AD 829, his remains were taken to Venice, Italy, where it is said that they still lie today inside the famous St. Mark's Basilica. Mark is usually shown holding his gospel. His other special symbol is a winged lion. His feast day is on April 25, and he is the patron saint of Venice, Italy. Saint Luke the Evangelist. A doctor, a historian, and a fine writer. Saint Luke had many talents. He was the author of the simple but moving account of Jesus' birth that millions of us know today. Luke was a Greek doctor who lived in the ancient city of Antioch. He was baptized by some of the first missionaries several years after Jesus' death and resurrection. Luke was a great friend of Paul and traveled with him on two of his missionary journeys. When Paul was arrested and sent to Rome, Italy, Luke decided to go with him. During the voyage, the ship broke up in the stormy seas. But with God's help, Paul, Luke, and every crew member managed to swim to the shore. Luke was a great writer with a gentle heart. The stories he told showed how Jesus cared for everyone, for women and men, non-Jews and Jews, and for people who were poor and sick. Luke lived to be very old. As well as writing the third gospel, he wrote a history of the early church, which he called the Acts of the Apostles. He is believed to have died peacefully in Botea in ancient Greece. Luke's symbol is an ox, the animal of sacrifice, because Luke's gospel begins with Zachariah's sacrifice in the temple. Luke's feast day is on October 18, patron saint of artists, craftspeople, doctors, and surgeons. Saint John the Evangelist. Once a follower of John the Baptist, John left behind a content fisherman's life to become a disciple of Jesus. In later years, he wrote down everything he had seen in the Gospel according to St. John. John and his older brother James were successful fishermen in Galilee, but when Jesus called them to become his disciples, they turned their backs on their work. John spent a lot of time with Jesus and became one of his most devoted friends. So much so that moments before he died, Jesus asked John to take care of his mother Mary. In later years, John suffered hardship and imprisonment as he helped to build the Christian church. After traveling in Turkey and Greece, he went to Rome, Italy, where the emperor had him thrown into boiling oil. Miraculously, John survived. In his last years, he returned to Turkey, where he worked on his gospel. John was over 90 years old when he died. His feast day was on October 27. He is the patron saint of bookbinders, printers, theologians, and writers. Remember, the four evangelists are significant. Without them, there is no New Testament. And without the New Testament, the Bible will not exist. Hope you learned something from this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.